7 signs you're betraying yourself, everyone. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you said yes when every fiber of your being wanted to scream no? When was the last time you stayed silent when your voice was desperately needed by yourself? We live in a world where saying yes is often praised, a sign of cooperation, kindness, and being a team player. But there's a hidden cost when that yes isn't genuine. When we constantly say yes to others while ignoring what we truly want or need, we are slowly, silently betraying ourselves. It often starts innocently. You agree to help a coworker even though your plate is full. You attend a social gathering when you'd rather rest. You nod along with a decision you don't support just to avoid rocking the boat. Over time, these small, reluctant agreements pile up, and the gap between what you do and what you want grows wider. That's not kindness anymore. It's self-erasure. Many of us are conditioned from a young age to believe that pleasing others is virtuous. We're taught to be agreeable, to not cause trouble, to put others first. But when that programming goes unchecked, it leads to a life where your own desires are constantly placed on the back burner. You become the dependable one, the accommodating one, but inside, resentment begins to fester. You start to feel invisible in your own life. The most painful part is that people rarely notice this inner struggle. They just see you as helpful, kind, and easygoing. But behind the smiles and nods is a person who's tired of betraying themselves in the name of harmony. The truth is, every time you say yes when you mean no, you chip away at your self-respect. You teach yourself that your needs are secondary, or worse, unworthy. And it's not just emotional. The consequences ripple out into every aspect of life. You may find yourself overwhelmed with commitments you didn't truly agree to, lacking the time or energy for what genuinely matters to you. Your goals get delayed. Your boundaries blur. Your inner voice gets quieter, drowned out by the demands and expectations of others. But here's this shift. Saying no doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest. It makes you whole. When you begin to protect your time, energy, and emotional space, you're not shutting people out. You're showing up with integrity. You're choosing quality over obligation. And you're modeling a kind of respect that invites others to do the same. The courage to say no when needed is a declaration that your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. It's not about swinging to the other extreme and becoming rigid or unkind. It's about balance. Learning to give from a full cup, not an empty one. So the next time you feel that internal hesitation, that little voice saying you don't want this, pause, listen, because that voice is your truth. And the most important person you need to stop betraying is you. There's a certain kind of loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from being surrounded by people and feeling like you can't speak your truth. When you silence your voice to fit in, you're not just keeping quiet, you're compromising the core of who you are. You're denying your thoughts, your feelings, and your identity in exchange for temporary acceptance. And that silence, over time, becomes a prison. It often starts with subtle moments. You're in a group and someone says something you disagree with, but you laugh along anyway. You want to share an idea in a meeting, but you hold back, unsure if it will be accepted. You dress differently, talk differently, or hide parts of your personality just to blend in. And while on the surface it might seem like you're just adapting or being polite, what you're really doing is editing yourself to fit someone else's mold. There's a deep fear behind this behavior, the fear of rejection, the idea that if people knew the real you, they might walk away, that your opinions are too strong, your feelings too much, your story too messy, so you shrink, You nod when you want to speak. You conform when you long to express. And eventually you start to forget what your own voice even sounds like. But the cost of fitting in this way is enormous. You start to lose your sense of authenticity. The people around you like the version of you that you've carefully curated, not the real you. That means even when you receive approval or praise, it feels hollow because deep down you know it's not fully earned. It's not for you, it's for the mask you're wearing. Worse still, when you silence yourself long enough, it doesn't just affect your confidence, it erodes your sense of worth. You begin to believe that your voice doesn't matter, that your presence must always be filtered, that your truth is something to be ashamed of. This is not humility, this is self-abandonment. Reclaiming your voice isn't easy. It takes courage to speak up in a room where everyone thinks differently. It takes strength to disagree, to share a vulnerable story, or to admit what you really want. But when you start to do that, even in small moments, something powerful happens. You begin to reconnect with yourself. You begin to build relationships based on honesty, not performance. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to be loud to be seen. But you do need to be real. Because your voice carries weight. Your perspective matters. And the right people, the people who truly belong in your life, will never ask you to silence yourself to earn their approval. The world doesn't need more conformity. It needs more truth. And that starts with yours. There's an inner voice inside each of us, subtle, instinctive, and often unexplainable, that speaks up when something isn't right. This is your gut feeling, your intuition, the part of you that knows the truth before your mind has had time to rationalize it. But too often we dismiss this voice. We override it with logic, doubt, or the opinions of others. We tell ourselves we're overreacting, being irrational, or just imagining things. And in doing so, we betray ourselves. Ignoring your gut rarely feels catastrophic in the moment. It usually comes as a quiet discomfort, a small nudge that something feels off, a relationship that drains you, a job that suffocates you, a decision that doesn't sit quite right. But rather than pause and listen, we barrel forward. We convince ourselves that everyone else knows better, that we're being too sensitive, that if we just keep going, the uneasy feeling will go away. It doesn't. It grows. Your gut is not magic, but it is a kind of wisdom. It draws from your lived experiences, your values, and your subconscious understanding of the world. It can detect dishonesty, danger, or misalignment before your conscious mind can explain why. When you ignore it, you're not being cautious, you're cutting off access to one of your most powerful inner tools, and the cost is high. Ignoring your gut leads to decisions that feel forced and paths that don't truly belong to you. You might stay in a relationship that no longer feels safe or fulfilling, telling yourself it's not that bad. You might accept a job that drains your spirit because on paper it looks impressive. You might ignore red flags in a friendship or business deal, thinking you're just being overly critical. But deep down, you know, you always know. And every time you look away from that knowing, you send yourself the message, I don't trust you. Over time, this self-mistrust builds. You second-guess yourself constantly. You ask everyone else what they think before checking in with how you feel. You become disconnected from your own internal compass, relying on external validation to guide your choices. And suddenly your life starts to feel foreign. The journey back starts with small acts of self-trust. It starts by listening to that discomfort instead of brushing it aside. It means creating space for quiet reflection, where your intuition has room to speak without being drowned out by noise and fear. It means honoring the voice that says, "This isn't right," even if you can't fully explain why yet. Or your gut isn't about avoiding every mistake. It's about being aligned. It's about living in integrity with yourself, making choices that feel true even when they're hard. Your gut is not your enemy. It's your inner guide, your protector, your truth teller. The more you listen, the clearer it becomes. And when you finally choose to trust it, you stop betraying yourself and start coming home to who you really are. There are things in life we endure out of necessity: long commutes, difficult conversations, moments of discomfort. But there's a difference between temporary discomfort and ongoing depletion. When you consistently tolerate what drains you, whether it's people, environments, habits, or responsibilities, you are slowly bleeding away your energy, your joy, and your sense of self. It's a quiet, persistent betrayal that often goes unnoticed until you wake up one day and realize you no longer recognize the life you're living. It might be a toxic relationship you've grown used to, one where you're constantly giving and rarely receiving. You excuse it, they're just going through something, or it's not always bad. You justify the emotional exhaustion because walking away feels too hard. Or it might be a job that pays the bills but leaves you numb, uninspired, and dreading each morning. You tell yourself you're lucky to have it, that now's not the time to rock the boat, so you stay. Sometimes what drains you isn't even external. It could be a pattern of negative self-talk you've accepted as normal, or commitments you make out of guilt rather than genuine desire. It could be constantly saying yes to others while putting your own needs last. And the more you tolerate these things, the more you teach yourself that your well-being is negotiable, something you can sacrifice in order to keep the peace, keep the job, keep the image. The truth is, you can't build a fulfilling life on a foundation of toleration. You weren't meant to just get through your days. You were meant to live them with purpose, passion, and peace. But when you're surrounded by what drains you, that becomes almost impossible. Your creativity suffers, your relationships become strained, your mental and physical health take a hit, and worst of all, your spirit starts to dim. Many of us stay in these draining situations because we fear change, we fear discomfort, or we believe that prioritizing ourselves is selfish. But here's what's more dangerous than change: staying stuck. What's more selfish than choosing discomfort is expecting yourself to carry it endlessly without breaking. You are not meant to be the dumping ground for other people's problems. You are not a machine that exists to produce, perform, and please at the expense of your own soul. Releasing what drains you isn't easy. It requires hard conversations, firm boundaries, and sometimes painful exits. But it's also one of the most loving things you can do for yourself. When you begin to protect your energy with the same care you offer others, you make room for the things that truly nourish you, the relationships that uplift, the work that excites, the peace that sustains. You deserve more than survival. You deserve vitality, clarity, and joy. Stop tolerating what drains you. Start choosing what fuels you, because your life is far too precious to waste on anything that robs you of yourself. There's a certain kind of betrayal that doesn't look like betrayal at all. It looks like humility. It looks like politeness. It looks like being considerate. but in reality is self-abandonment dressed as kindness. When you shrink yourself to make others comfortable, when you dim your light, downplay your strengths, or hide your joy so no one feels threatened, you are betraying the fullness of who you are. And over time, that kind of shrinking takes a deep toll. You might notice it in small ways. You achieve something great, but you immediately minimize it, saying it was nothing. You have a bold idea in a group setting, but you let someone else take credit because you don't want to come off as arrogant. You dress down your appearance, mute your personality, or avoid speaking passionately about your interests because you're afraid someone might think you're too much. What you're really doing is trying to avoid discomfort, not your own, but theirs. Why do we do this? Often it's rooted in past experiences. Maybe you were told growing up that you were too loud, too intense, or too ambitious. Maybe you learned that standing out came with consequences, jealousy, judgment, isolation, so you adjusted. You learned to make yourself smaller, quieter, more acceptable. And the world in many ways rewarded you for it. People found you easy to be around. You were praised for being modest, agreeable, low maintenance. But inside it doesn't feel like peace. It feels like suffocation. It feels like you're constantly editing yourself, removing parts of your story, your success, your personality, to fit into spaces that weren't designed to hold your full presence. You start to feel disconnected from your own power. You begin to question whether it's even safe to be fully seen. The truth is, you weren't born to shrink. You weren't giving your talents, your passion, your voice, or your brilliance just to hide them. Playing small doesn't serve the world. It doesn't make you more likable or lovable in any lasting way. All it does is reinforce the belief that you are too much. A belief that isn't true, but becomes your reality when you live by it. And here's the irony. People are inspired by authenticity. They are drawn to confidence. Your light doesn't shame others. It gives them permission to shine too. When you own your worth unapologetically, you help create a world where more people feel safe to do the same. Yes, some people might be uncomfortable when you stop shrinking. Some may pull away, misunderstand you, or feel threatened by your growth. Let them. Your job is not to make yourself small enough to fit into their limited view of you. Your job is to expand, to take up space, to live in the fullness of who you are. Because the world doesn't need more people shrinking. It needs more people standing tall in their truth, unapologetic and free. You don't have to be small to be loved. You only have to be real. There's a unique kind of pain that comes from letting yourself down. Not once, but repeatedly. You may not even notice it at first. You say you start waking up earlier, begin that project, stop texting someone who hurt you, or finally prioritize your mental health, and then you don't. You tell yourself it's no big deal, that you'll try again tomorrow, but each time you break a promise to yourself, something subtle happens. You weaken the trust you have in you. You talk a lot about the importance of keeping our word to others, how it builds trust, respect, and reliability. But rarely do we give the same weight to the promises we make to ourselves. And yet those are the most foundational ones. Because if you can't trust yourself to follow through, who can you rely on? What stability do you have? Self-trust is the root of confidence. Without it, everything feels shaky. Breaking promises to yourself doesn't always look dramatic. It's often quiet, habitual. You plan to exercise but hit snooze instead. You swear this weekend you'll finally write that book chapter but get caught in another Netflix binge. You tell yourself you won't get involved with someone emotionally unavailable again, but the moment they reach out, you're back. The pattern doesn't just waste time, it slowly chips away at your belief that you can change, grow, or do hard things. And when you don't believe yourself anymore, motivation fades. You stop setting goals because you assume you won't follow through. You stop trying to improve because past failures have become your identity. Worst of all, you stop dreaming, not because your dreams are impossible, but because you don't trust yourself to get there. But here's the truth. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're just stuck in a cycle that needs to be interrupted. Rebuilding trust with yourself is like repairing any relationship. It takes consistency, patience, and honesty. It starts small. Make one promise to yourself today that you know you can keep. Keep it no matter what. Then do it again tomorrow. Bit by bit, you prove to yourself that your word means something. And when you slip, because you will, don't respond with shame. Respond with awareness. Ask yourself why the promise was hard to keep. Was it unrealistic? Were you exhausted? Were you trying to meet someone else's expectation instead of your own? Adjust, forgive, try again, not from a place of punishment, but from love. You keep appointments with your boss, your friends, your partner, because you respect them. Imagine what would happen if you gave yourself that same respect. Imagine the confidence that would grow if every promise you made to yourself became a sacred agreement. That's not ego, that's integrity. Keeping your word to yourself is the first step toward a life that reflects your values, your goals, and your worth. It's how you show yourself that you matter, not someday,